So I remember when I first met our neighbor Nikki when we moved into our neighborhood, and it's about 10 years ago. She was a hoarder and a recluse. Have you guys ever seen that show, Hoarders? It was that bad. And her husband had passed away from cancer, and she just closed in on herself because her husband was her life. Her husband was her Savior. Her husband was her God. And when her God was taken away, she had nothing. And so she just fell apart. And nobody really knew what to do with her because I know there were even some Christians that lived in the neighborhood and they tried to reach out, but she just kept pushing them away because she didn't want to trust herself to be hurt again. She didn't want to give herself away to another person who was going to die or walk away or reject her. And I remember we came in and, like I think oftentimes we do, we'll change it. We're different. And so we tried to love on Nikki, and I'm cutting her lawn, every day, and not every day, but every day it needs it. And we're knocking on her door and asking, we're bringing over cookies. And every time we do it, she doesn't answer the door. She just keeps pushing us away. I remember one day it got so bad, my wife and I were sitting on the front porch just hanging out talking, and Nikki got into her van, and we had these big recycle bins and garbage bins right in front of our house on the street. And Nikki got into her car, and she looked over at us, and she just revved the engine. Vroom, vroom. And we looked, and we're like, I don't know what she's doing. And her car is pointing at our garbage bins. And she just puts that thing into drive and runs over them right in front of us. Literally, whoom, looking at us, and they just boom, boom, boom. They knock over. My wife and I look at each other going, what is going on? This lady's lost her mind. We'd sit in the backyard and hang out with our friends, and she would bang on the back of her house with her cane inside because she was back there, and her room was right by where we were hanging out, just a fence away, and we'd all of a sudden hear her cane do this, what, on the wall, and she'd go, shut up! Shut up! I'm tired of hearing you! And that was the ongoing nature of our relationship. And I remember one day my wife came home and she said, that's it. I washed my hands of that woman. I'm done with her. And I remember we had this still small voice of the Spirit speak into that moment and say, it's about time you stopped trying to be God. It's about time you gave up trying to be her Savior. And the next thing we heard is, stop trying to change her and start loving her. You're not loving her. She's become a project to you. And then the next thing we heard is, what if Nikki was your mother? How would you love her? What if she was family? How would you love her? And see, what's going on in this passage is God has called his people to be his family and to love one another in the same way in which he loved them. And they're not being a good picture of that to the world. They're loving with discrimination. They're loving with separation. They're loving by just kind of choosing who they should and should not love. They're loving when it's easy, when it makes sense, when they can understand each other. They're not working hard at love in the same way that God the Father worked hard at loving us through his Son. I remember that. That was a key moment for my wife and I. Love her like she is family. Just like the Father loved you. Love Nikki. And I remember thinking, that could take forever. And the next thing I heard him say is, how long do you think I've been working on you?